Hi folks, I'm Colby Grant, and I'm the Northwest Regional Specialist with the Nutrient and Pest Management Program, and today I'm going to be talking about the economic nitrogen rate in corn. So in Wisconsin, to determine the economic nitrogen rate for corn, we recommend using the maximum return to nitrogen rate, or the MRTN. So the MRTN is just a ratio which demonstrates the cost per pound of nitrogen and the cost per bushel of corn. So when the difference is greater between these two, we're going to have a lower valued MRTN factor. When the difference is closer, we're going to end up with a higher factor, with the maximum being 0.20. So this is kind of demonstrated in this figure. So when we have, a really small difference when we're spending either more for nitrogen or our commodity prices are lower, the return that we're going to get per dollar of nitrogen spent is going to be lower, so our recommended N rate is also going to be lower. When the difference is great, we're going to see more return for spending money on nitrogen, and therefore the recommended rate is going to be higher. So then how do we determine the MRTN rate? So there are several ways that we can do this, and I'm going to show you them all. So the first way that I'm going to show you is, if you're using a SNAP Plus nutrient management plant, it's really easy to go back in and adjust your rate, depending on changes in commodity prices or changes in fertilizer prices as you get closer to planting. So in SNAP Plus, on the cropping screen, this is done, where within a single field in that cropping year, there is a little box for the MRTN info, and you can click that box. And then in here you can calculate your end price in dollars per pound and input it, as well as the current corn price, and then it's going to calculate that factor and adjust your the MRTN ratio, as well as the rate that is recommended within SNAP Plus. If you're doing this, by hand or without SNAP Plus, we have a resource in NPM and chart, which will be linked in the description, that you can use for most years. In some years, though, such as in the winter of 2021, 2022, the price of nitrogen might exceed what is on this chart, or in some years we've had prices of corn which are higher. So it's always a good idea if you can't find the MRTN ratio that you should be using on this chart, you can also use just calculate the MRTN ratio by hand and kind of round it up. So for an example of this, I'm in December of 2021, and I did a quick calculation calculating the dollar per pound of urea. So I had, currently the price is really high at $900 for 1 ton of urea. And then we divided that by 2,000 pounds to get the dollar per pound of urea fertilizer. And then we know that there's 0.46 pounds, or it's 46% nitrogen per pound of urea. So we divided the value from the last division by 0.46, and that gave us a value of 0.98 or 98 cents per pound of nitrogen. And then calculating our MRTN ratio, we had 98 cents per pound of nitrogen, with our current corn price of $5.25 per bushel of corn, and that gives us an MRTN ratio of 0.19, which we would then round up to 0.20. So after we've calculated our MRTN ratio, we can look at the University of Wisconsin nitrogen guidelines for corn, or look at A2809, which will both be linked in the description, to then determine the actual rate that we should be supplying to our crop, depending on what our previous crop in rotation was, our soil type, and the productivity level of our soil. So getting that actual rate that you should be using if you're calculating it by hand. So for example, let's say that we were using a loamy high productivity yield potential soil. Our previous crop was corn, and we calculated our ratio of 0.20. So the rate that we would want to apply is 135 pounds of N. And it's kind of interesting to look at this table, just how much the nitrogen rate fluctuates depending on that ratio. So it's a great decision to go ahead and calculate your MRTN rate, just before you're deciding to purchase fertilizer, and make the best decision that you can to remain profitable. The third way to calculate your MRTN rate is to just use our corn N rate calculator app available with NPM, which will be linked in the description. This app allows you to really quickly calculate your MRTN by just filling out the information that we would have used in Snap Plus, or if you were calculating by hand, into the app. And then you can just email yourself for the results or record them in an Excel spreadsheet, from which there you could really easily just calculate the rates for your different fields, make the manure credit or legume credit deductions that you need, and get yourself some really great economic nitrogen rates. Thanks for watching my video on determining the economic N rate in corn. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me or give me a call.